This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. A general but credible threat has led Mayor Katie Wilson's administration to turn on surveillance cameras in the Stadium District ahead of the World Cup. We'll get into what that means for the city's approach to surveillance. And how well do you know our city's recent headlines? We've got a news quiz for you to test your knowledge against two local journalists. Today, we've got Hannah Krieg, founder of The Burner. Welcome, Hannah. Are you ready for this quiz?
I was like, are the two local journalists us? I was like, oh my God, we're doing a quiz? This
You
was
gotta
not
be
in the show notes.
Yeah, pop quiz.
Thanks for having me, though.
Surprise. We also have Adam Willems, journalist and co-founder of CHUM. Are you ready, Adam?
As ready as I can ever be.
I have full faith that both of you are going to ace it.
Thanks.
But first, later today, City Council is expected to vote on an ordinance that would ban new data centers for the next year. Adam, you recently wrote a piece for The Guardian about this. Is that ordinance expected to pass?
The ordinance is expected to pass. The substance of it is still up in the air, by which I mean last Wednesday, somewhat suddenly, without much public consultation, the Land Use Committee unanimously passed an amendment that would allow existing data centers in Seattle to apply to expand their capacity by 20 megawatts each. Now, in sort of like a doomsday scenario, that would mean that you're essentially opening the door to existing data centers expanding in aggregate their electrical capacity by 600 megawatts. And for reference, that's like 60%-ish of the amount of electricity that the city of Seattle uses.
Okay, so
That's
significant.
a very unlikely, significant. To take a step back, the reason why there's this moratorium is that on April 10th, Seattle Times journalist Greg Kim broke the news that 4 developers were applying to build 5 massive data centers in the larger Seattle area, serviced by Seattle City Light. And they would have consumed up to 369 megawatts of power, so around 30%. And the worry was first sort of environmental concerns, but then also that this would lead to sort of skyrocketing electrical prices in the city. And very quickly, there was sort of a coalescing among lawmakers, among the mayor's office, and among activists around sort of imposing a year-long ban on the construction of new data centers. And what's interesting is on May 1st, Mayor Wilson also talked about this moratorium being on expanded data centers, so existing ones. And now that language has changed.
Okay.
So sort of this new amendment, it's unlikely, but it could lead to an expansion nearly double that initial sort of those 5 mega centers that we were worried about 2 months ago. So I spoke to a spokesperson from 350 Seattle, which is one of the groups that's been working on this. And they sent a letter to Councilmember Eddie Lin, basically asking for there to be tighter language around this amendment, particularly because lawmakers basically were saying, like, look, we have health centers that have data centers. There's sort of like civic uses for data centers as they currently exist in Seattle.
Sure.
And they're by and large very small. We can't like necessarily hamstring them through this moratorium. So let's try and like give them a bit of wiggle room. But it seems like that wiggle room is maybe like a little too much wiggle room right now to the tune of like hundreds of megawatts.
I was going to ask who introduced that amendment initially.
It was Eddie Lin, Councilmember Lin, who's the chair of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee. And then it passed unanimously without much sort of hubbub during committee. But now sort of activists are asking for maybe something like a cap. So in aggregate across the entire city, we can expand by 20 megawatts or a percentage increase. So like if you're a 25 megawatt data center, you could increase by like 10% or something like that. So we don't see these like tiny guys suddenly like pentupling in size or something pretty outlandish.
Yeah, Adam, I guess I didn't watch the meeting, so I'm wondering, like, was the like argument from city council sort of like, this is in itself like a regulation? Sometimes they'll do that where it's like something that does help the business interest or whatever is like framed as like a regulation. Is that kind of their logic or?
It wasn't necessarily framed as a regulation as much as sort of an acknowledgement that not all data centers are the same. So
Okay.
like Harborview's data center shouldn't be considered in the same light as like an OpenAI mega data center,
Okay.
which I think is a pretty fair argument.
I could concede.
But right, but the
Yeah.
sort of the theory versus the practice of that is a little
Yeah.
concerning. And I spoke to a few activists. There are tons of tech workers also who have been pushing for this moratorium,
Yes.
especially because a lot of them have seen firsthand the effects of how data centers can lead to thousands and thousands of job losses through automation. And I spoke to an electrical engineer who was basically saying that a lot of tech companies sort of rent out space in existing data centers. So like this could theoretically be something of a backdoor if that application for approval of expansion is sort of done very loosely.
This is the legislation that's supposed to protect us while we figure out regulations. And so it's important that it's keeping, the footprint of data centers, whether new or existing, under control so we can assess like the grid impact. Like that really seems like a huge concession in this bill to have such an amendment.
Right. And it's like the point of a moratorium is to pause.
Right.
And suddenly there seems to be this sort of conduit for a lot of dynamic expansion, which then defeats the purpose of a moratorium.
So speaking of this pause, activists have proposed this 1-year timeline to take a pause and just assess what the potential consequences would be of allowing these big data centers to come in. Is that just kicking the can down the road? Or like what is going to happen in that year? Are there any concrete proposals for what's going to happen?
So there are a couple ways to answer this. One of them is that some activists see kicking the can down the road as itself a victory because they cite an impending $800 billion revenue shortfall for the AI industry. And basically they're like, look, the AI sector seems like it may pop sort of the bubble. And if we can delay things by a year, that could very logically lead to these data centers not being built here at all. So that's sort of like one leg of the stool, I guess. The other is that Seattle City Light, in conjunction with like a whole alphabet soup of offices, is working on very specific regulations around large load data centers. That would include things like having them pay separate rates for electricity, also having very specific sort of air pollution, water use, noise pollution, like blah, 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 lots of different sort of stipulations there in exchange for approval. And then also depending on sort of what the final results of this huddling is, potentially having data centers sort of have to pay for their own power. I spoke to Mayor Wilson about this, though, and she said a big question is like whether data centers are a smart use of urban land. But like if you suddenly have 2 city blocks that are just going to warehousing data chips, like that can't be used for housing. I mean, just like a whole litany of things that are maybe more contributive to the social fabric or employ more people and use up fewer resources.
And we already have data centers downtown, which I think many people were surprised to learn when this story first came up in April. So I think one question that I have about these applications for the larger data centers are where would they even go within the city?
I think it's sort of like more South Seattle areas that are already extremely overburdened when it comes to environmental pollution. And then Tukwila also was sort of another site that had been named. And that is served by Seattle City Light. And so Seattle City Light is effectively able to regulate beyond city limits through certain kinds of resolutions.
I was going to ask, is this moratorium apply to that? Or would that be up to the Tukwila City Council?
So there are 2 separate measures that are moving through City Council this afternoon. One is the moratorium, which is through the Land Use Committee, and the other is it's sort of a parallel resolution, and the Seattle City Light Committee, and now they're sort of coming to a full vote. The resolution, essentially, I'm oversimplifying, maybe criminally so, but that Seattle City Light follows sort of like the spirit of what's happening in the moratorium and gets to work on figuring out what would sort of be needed to effectively regulate data centers or charge them a right rate, et cetera, et cetera.
So going back to the first leg of the stool, when you were saying that activists were thinking of the moratorium passing as a potential victory on its own, just because it might slow down AI development, what does this mean about the city's approach to AI as a whole and how it might be seen by all these giants in town? Like, I'm thinking about the ongoing discussion about whether Seattle is business friendly. I think that conversation so far is mostly focused on taxes, but I can also definitely see an argument that this moratorium is constricting the ability of these big companies that are either built around AI or really pivoting to prioritizing AI while they're laying off thousands of workers in town as well.
Yeah. Microsoft and Amazon are slated this year to spend $300 billion on AI investments. And at the same time, they are laying off thousands of workers locally. I feel like there's, to some extent, an increasing coalescing around seeing AI as an employment threat among a powerful sort of sector of the labor force in the city. You still have maybe executives or what have you who are maybe a bit more sort of invested in the expansion of AI. When I spoke to tech workers, they said, oh, that guy was so gung-ho about, using ChatGPT at work or like Claude Code or whatever, and now he's been laid off. And so, like, I think folks see the sort of deleterious effects of the expansion of those services and also the infrastructure that make those services possible.
Hannah, what do you think this signals?
It's interesting because we're kind of seeing there are times when like the labor interests and the business interests can kind of get along, because it's like the idea of like the business is like a job creator, and this is like something that's in the business interest that is directly not a job creator. And we're not seeing a ton of jobs coming from these data centers. And in fact, we're seeing the downstream effects of AI like taking jobs away. But then there's also, there's arguments to be made. I know there was some kind of like movement, small thought within like MLK labor for, workers in the like electrician like world that were like, maybe we should be against this moratorium because maybe this would be, we'd have more people who need to work on our grid and stuff.
In my interview with Mayor Wilson, she was talking about how, we should be concerned to some extent about sort of this tech bubble that we're in because of the fact that we're so overly reliant on the tech industry sort of for tax revenue. And she also said she wants to figure out ways to get the city's economy to diversify away from or diversify beyond the tech sector, sort of into being a home and an incubator for a whole other range of business types. What that means and what that means for, the existing princes of the city, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, Adam, please follow up on that for us and tell us more when you learn more, because I would love to know what other sectors that might focus on. For now, it seems like if Seattle passes this moratorium, we would be the biggest U.S. city so far to do it. And we'll see what the vote looks like at 2 p.m. today. Let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about another hot button issue in the city: the mayor turning the surveillance cameras in the Stadium District back on. On Friday, Mayor Katie Wilson announced the city will turn on Stadium District cameras during the World Cup. So you all might remember that back in March, Wilson announced that she'd be pausing the planned expansion of the city's surveillance camera pilot program, but that the city would install some new cameras in the Stadium District ahead of the World Cup, and they would only be turned on if there was a, quote, credible threat. Now, Wilson said in a statement, after meeting with Seattle Police Department and the FBI, there are, quote, general but credible threats to safety and security, and so the cameras will be activated. First off, has Mayor Wilson defined what a credible threat is? Because I remember being at that press conference in March, and at the time, a reporter in the crowd asked that question, and she was essentially like, we'll figure it out. Because at that point, we still had a lot of time. Now it seems like we've received a credible threat, apparently. Do we know what that means? Also, maybe we don't know what that means because it's not good to tell the general public what the threat is.
I think it hasn't been super clear. A reporter from Como, Jeremy Harris, tweeted that the mayor gave a definition that was like, quote, person or organization that has intention to cause significant harm to people or property during FIFA games and has the ability to carry it out, end quote. I kind of think it's just like you say credible threat, and it's like, if the cops tell me to turn on the cameras, I'm going to turn on the cameras. I think that's what this has kind of been code for. I don't really understand why we did this whole song and dance of like, I'm going to install cameras that I, Katie Wilson, think would be helpful in an emergency, and then I'm not going to turn them on until the emergency is here. It's like, if you are conceding that this is helpful, the internal logic is really mucky, and then you're dragging out your political like kind of fight and like attention. It just seems like it's bad politics, it's bad media strategy, and it's like, if you're just going to turn on the cameras anyway, why didn't you just say that in March? This seems like, I'm frustrated. Sorry.
I was like, Hannah, tell me how you really feel.
I've been stewing on this for a while, Jane.
There's also a question of like when it would actually, like, is there a clear definition of when a credible threat ends? And does this establish a precedent for like every time there's a Seahawks game or something, it's a lingering credible threat?
Yeah, that's what it seems like it is. It's just like, because this is a big event, there's always a general fear that something could happen.
So officials haven't disclosed the specific nature of the threats for obvious reasons, but it is unclear exactly even what day the cameras will be physically turned on. Yeah. The first match in Seattle is Monday, June 15th. And I do think that this opens up bigger questions about what this means for the mayor's approach to surveillance, period. Is this a standalone decision, or does it signal something bigger about the administration's approach to decisions that are coming down the pike? Like, I mean, yeah, for instance, what you brought up, Adam, like, when will the cameras be turned off? Will they be turned off afterwards?
When she made a big statement against the expansion back in September, it was kind of just like to draw a distinction between then Mayor Bruce Harrell, who had proposed the expansion, and then, people saw that, got excited about it, thought that was a principled stance of like, I am principally against surveillance, because she did say surveillance doesn't make communities safer. It puts us all at greater risk. It seems like she no longer believes that, because if you actually believe that, you would not be putting on the cameras. It's fine if she doesn't believe that, but it is an inconsistency. And when this audit comes back in a few months, I suppose, I think the audit will find that it's perfectly fine and you can expand as much as you want. And then I think we're on a path.
Well, funny you mentioned the audits. So CHUM and the South Seattle Emerald co-published an article ahead of Mayor Wilson's town hall that she had in, was that March or April?
I think the end of March.
End of March, thank you. About specifically the NYU Policing Project, which is the entity that's conducting this audit. And they have a very interesting funding history that includes, historically, Axon, the creator of the Taser, the Koch Foundation, Microsoft. A bunch of current and former SPD chiefs have been on various boards. So sort of like this question of like how much of a really like neutral arbiter can this group be if it's funded by a lot of the tech companies that create the surveillance technology that it's allegedly trying to regulate?
Are those just the companies that have enough money to put towards something like this, though? Does that necessarily mean that the people who are actually doing the work inside are compromised in some way?
Well, there have been some activists in California and law students at NYU Law School, where the Policing Project is headquartered, have spoken quite transparently about sort of ways that sort of leaked communications between police departments and the NYU Policing Project and sort of different forms of evidence seem to suggest there might be something of a quid pro quo here, or sort of like the value that the NYU Policing Project gives is that it makes surveillance technologies that police departments want palatable to the public, and then you get public buy-in.
I feel like we've heard a good amount from the perspective of wanting to not have these cameras long term.
Mhm.
I know that Rob Saka, Councilmember Rob Saka, at a recent city council meeting, told the story of his experience at the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing and was arguing that the camera should be turned on before something happens. And I do feel like Saka is one of many people in the city who have been advocating for this, partly maybe from a pro-camera, or at least not an anti-camera stance, but also looking at the World Cup as an exception in some way, right? Like that it somehow is separate from the larger city approach to surveillance. What are we hearing from people who are pro-camera, or at least not anti-camera, about this?
I think Saka's comments are interesting just because this whole conversation is sort of like missing the fact that like we already do have traffic cameras. Like I don't really like we have cameras in that area, and like there are ways to look at things. Like it's like about expansion that like we're talking about right now in this discussion. And so for someone like Saka, I wouldn't speak for just like a normal like neighborhood person who likes cameras, but like someone like Saka, I think who voted yes on the expansion and has been supporting it. It's like, this is just like a way to like make sure we're keeping on with the expansion, is to be like, well, this is FIFA. And a lot of people are sympathetic to that because like it is a big, international thing, but it's also a thing where we have more feds on the ground.
I don't know if it's the slippery slope argument, but it can be deployed in two different ways. And we saw this during that town hall in late March, a date I most definitely remember, where people were asking Mayor Wilson about, sort of civil rights implications and surveillance implications of these cameras. And she said, well, we're already surveilled all the time. And she was bringing up, our cell phones and Ring cameras are scattered everywhere across the city or what have you. So there are definitely ways that we're constantly surveilled. Does that then mean that we should have more? I'm not entirely bought into that. At the same time, as far as like groups that are in favor of the surveillance cameras, sort of following South Seattle Emerald's coverage after a really tragic shooting in Rainier Beach, there was sort of quite a vocal push for greater surveillance and policing around sort of areas where people felt like they weren't safe. Drive among sort of residents of Seattle, sort of my understanding is that complicated some of Mayor Wilson's approach also to sort of this question of whether or not to expand or turn on these cameras.
Well, seems like pretty soon here, we're going to have those cameras on. And I believe that Como reported that the cameras will be turned off after the World Cup. And I think that we've still got a long road ahead in terms of our city's relationship to surveillance. We've still got those audit findings that might come back, as Hannah mentioned. But for now, it seems like we're moving ahead with it for the World Cup. And I mean, apart from the cameras, I'm hoping that everyone has a good time and that everything stays safe. But let's take a break, and when we come back, let's play a little game where I'm going to quiz you all on some recent headlines. We're doing something new here, and we're going to do a news quiz, and we're calling it Seattle Small Talk, because we're thinking of this as what would come up if you were hanging out with friends or at a little party? What are people talking about around town right now? So, okay, first question for you all. The Space Needle was recently repainted. What is the design right now?
Soccer. It's soccer ball. FIFA. Soccer.
Soccer ball.
I'm like embarrassed.
Hannah knows. All right. Both of you seem to know that one. What do we think of the new design?
She's cute. She's different. It feels very on the right.
Yeah, it's not very artistic. Yeah, it's very literal, like not very highbrow.
Right. Like the artist statement. I'm very curious about that one. Yeah. I looked at a soccer ball and I traced it. And
yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I saw it. I was like, it does look like a soccer ball,
I love when they do that shit. I thought it was awesome. I love the Space Needle. I look at her every day. I loved when it was orange. I was so happy that they painted it again. But you can't see it unless you're from above. I was really struggling to find a location.
I've never really seen the top of the Space Needle from a plane, now that I'm thinking of it.
I think
I feel like the flight path is like awkwardly like not over downtown in that direction. But yes, it's a cute idea.
Are you not looking down when you're on the plane?
Yeah,
I think it's directly over.
Are you looking left instead of right when
Have
you're
you ever been on a plane?
You know what? I actually do usually try and get a seat on the side of the plane that would show me Tahoma instead of
that'll do it.
Instead of downtown. So maybe I just need to start getting a seat on the right side of the plane so I can see the Space Needle.
Get seat F and then you get a great little view.
All right. That's my fault. That's my bad, you all. All right, moving along. Seattle was just named #1 in the country for something. What is it? I mean, this happens pretty consistently, but there was one big one this week.
Can we have a hint?
It's transit related.
Oh, light rail use.
Uh-huh. We are now #1 in the country for light rail ridership. Thanks in part to the 2 line, which is very exciting.
Surpassing Boston, San Diego, Los Angeles.
That's right. Clearly #1 city. Moving along. New York Times recently covered an aspect of Seattle living that I think we've all just kind of accepted as life here. What is it?
Street preachers.
Adam is killing it. Yes.
I don't have the NYT subscription.
That's on brand for you, Hannah.
I will say it's from my Seattle Times delivery. My paper delivery in the Seattle Times.
Okay. I see. Hyper local.
Yeah, comment, like, subscribe. If you need a promo code, let me know.
Adam 15 for 15% off.
Right.
When I saw that piece, my first thought was I would have never thought to cover this. Yeah. But it makes sense for a national newspaper, for people who maybe don't know about life in Seattle as much, to cover this little piece. And
is that not common? I'm confused. Like the other cities don't have street preachers?
No, not amplified ones, at least.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to read the story.
Yes. Get your
I'll
promo
send you a
code
gift
from
link.
Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go. But I think what would be really interesting, and actually what I would love to cover on this show, is the people who have made a concerted effort to try and drown out that noise with something else. Like, I know there have been musicians, there have been kind of counter preachers, like people just reading other things that are trying to compete with that noise. So yeah, if you're one of those people, shoot us an email, seattle@citycast.fm. Would love to talk to you guys. All right, let's hit one last one. The Seattle Times reports that a former industrial fuel terminal near the Ballard Locks is getting renovated. What is it going to become? Does Adam know this one?
Yeah, I do.
Adam
I do.
has got 4 out of 4 here.
I'm so sorry.
No, get it.
Don't be sorry.
No, it's like the spelling bee kid energy on CityCast right here. It was a fuel depot for decades. Then they did like a topsoil cleanup of it. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to be car collectors, like ultra luxury garages that start at $600,000, and then a mega yacht marina right on the Ship Canal. So, speaking of effective uses of urban land, this feels like a really wonderful tribute to our overlords.
Yes, and condos that are between 850 and 1250 square feet with 20-foot ceilings that are going to start at around $600K and go for upwards of $1 million. Those are
I thought the condos
small.
were for cars, though, not for people.
They're only condos for the cars. I thought that maybe a person would want to buy a condo to live in because that's a thing that you need. Okay, so it's only a condo for. I'm wrapping my head around this. Yeah. I like that I asked the question.
Why would they call it a condo?
I just assumed.
Did you put the word condo? Who's saying condo? This seems like a bad word for what we're talking about. How could it be a condo in a garage?
A car condo. Okay, also, can we adjudicate if there's a difference between a mega yacht and a super yacht? Because I keep seeing the term super yacht but I also hear people saying mega yacht. But I think at this point, we're just
I don't
in
think
our
it's a
minds
technical
too big.
term. I don't.
No. Okay.
I think it's whatever prefix you think is like fun.
Yeah. Giga yacht.
Giga yacht. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But maybe there is. I mean, it's above my tax bracket, I guess, to know the distinctions between a super and a mega. But I kind of think it's just any yacht you think is kind of big.
I can already see the emails pouring into our inbox being
They're
like,
gonna
how
know CityCast listeners are gonna know the difference.
So yeah, if you know, actually let us know, because I love being told that I am wrong about something and learning something new. And unfortunately, it does seem like I'm going to have to learn the distinction if there is one, since we keep having to talk about very large yachts.
It's becoming
on this
important
show.
for us. Yeah.
It's like the wine bottle sizes, how there's like Magnum, which is like super fancy, and then it gets like biblical, like very Old Testament quickly, where it's like the Nebuchadnezzar like bottle, where it's like 7 liters, whole thing. So I think like while we're learning the yacht sizes, we should also start thinking about our fine wines.
Yeah.
All right. Again, that is above my tax bracket, but Adam Willems, journalist and co-founder of CHUM News, thank you so much for bringing us your knowledge and acing this news quiz.
God.
Well, thank you. It's an honor.
And Hannah Krieg, founder of The Burner. You know, I gotta say, Adam kind of spanked you on that quiz, but thank you for adding your delightful commentary as always.
I do my best. I do my best.
That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I'm your host, Jane Sihu. And listeners, we love hearing from you. Please do let us know if you are one of those people out there trying to make noise to counter those street preachers. If you know what the difference between a mega yacht and a super yacht is, you can send us an email at seattle@citycast.fm. You can always call us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline too, and that's 206-880-3931. Until next time, see you, Seattle.